round with this house regrets, the widespread belief that motherhood is a rewarding experience. Debating this round are Team Sri Lanka who are proposing, who are as well as Team Canada who are opposing. The adjudicators for this round are Dennis from Taiwan, Adam from Czech Republic, and Brian from China. So each speaker has 8 minutes to deliver their speech. At the end of the speech will be marked by a double knock. The first and the 7th minute are protected from points of information and will be marked by 1 knock. The first or the second speaker of each side will deliver a 4-minute reply speech for their side, and there are no points of information during the reply speeches. I now invite the first speaker of the proposition to deliver their speech.
I told my mother that I don't necessarily see myself going on the same path as she did. I don't think I want to have kids. Her response was to laugh and say, that's what everybody says, but when you actually become a mother, you will love it. It's all worth it in the end. And this is exactly the kind of narrative we are fed from the youngest ages, when we get dolls and we're told to play mama to them instead of pretend to be an engineer or a doctor or something. This is exactly what this belief is, because it is not just any other belief. It is an indoctrination. It is an invalidation of what people themselves feel, and it's forcing them to believe something else that the patriarchy has created, right? Which is why we regret the widespread belief that motherhood is a rewarding experience. We define motherhood as the parenting experience of a woman in particular, her pregnancy, her child rearing, her devotion of her life to her child. And as a rewarding experience, we characterize this to be something that means you will inherently enjoy this no matter what else, right? Our stance is that yes, it can be a rewarding experience to some. We don't contest this. However, the problem is this sort of indoctrination and that it is pushed on everyone, and that in turn limits people's abilities. We have 3 arguments for the House today. No, thank you, sir. Firstly, not every woman is a mother. Secondly, impacts on the children. And thirdly, on impacts on the fathers, which Ashani will be dealing with. Before I move on, yes, sir, I'll take your point.
In the absence of such a widespread belief, what do you believe is the counterfactual belief that is the norm on your side?
So we don't think you need to necessarily think that something is so glorified and perfect to be good at it. I don't think that debating is the best thing and my ultimate calling, but I can still push myself to be better at it. You don't need to glorify something to necessarily be good at it and perfect it. Let's move directly on into our first argument, women, which is about how not every woman is a mother. Through this, we're going to prove that this pressure created by this belief constrains women and their abilities, and in turn harms them and their societies, right? Firstly, how does glorification change the game? Because motherhood is portrayed to be a woman's divine calling. It is the sole purpose of her existence. This is why we have goddesses like Aphrodite that are dedicated purely towards fertility of a woman. I don't see any such goddess, God for a man, right? And we tell you that this sole purpose characterization means that any other option that a woman can pursue is necessarily lesser or invalidated. Work, sex, travel, all of these are unnecessary if they get in the way of your role as a mother. And secondly, what is the stereotype that this perpetuates, right? That we glorify women for their biology, not necessarily for their skill, not everything behind them that they are capable of doing, which discourages you from finding the skill, the inherent abilities and talents that every woman has to offer, right? We tell you that these 2 things have 5 impacts. Firstly, women aren't allowed to work or pursue their skills because it is considered a distraction from their kids. Because these kids are supposed to be your sole focus, and if you're not giving them 100% of your attention, then you're doing them a disservice, right? This belief is not only believed by women, it is believed by men. It is believed by the patriarchy, who have the power in society to be able to tell their wives, stay at home, this is your job, right? And therefore we have less female labor force participation, less women being able to discover all the abilities that they have, right? But secondly, it makes women not want to work because they are taught from a young age that the only hope they should have is to be a good mother. This means that you have less dreams, and this pushes you to have less achievements in the future because you don't necessarily have anything pushing you to diversify, to become more than you already are. Thirdly, a necessary characteristic of this belief is that it hushes up the risks associated with motherhood, like the fact that maternal mortality is a very big problem, especially in developing countries where this belief is very prevalent, right? In Africa, maternal mortality is so high, yet they are also having the most amounts of children, right? But along with it, there is depression that comes along. You could have a stillborn baby. There are all these emotional and physical harms that are not talked about. What does this lead to? Firstly, it means that you deny a woman's struggles. You deny your own struggles because this is not talked about. This is not what the ideal convention of motherhood is supposed to be. Therefore, I am going through the wrong kind of motherhood. I am invalid. But secondly, it makes you believe that you are a terrible mother because your process of motherhood isn't as perfect as it has been. It isn't as rewarding as everyone says that it should be, right? And we don't think anyone should have to go through this. But fourthly, it means the fourth impact. It means that unwilling women also are forced to have kids because of their family, because of social acceptance, because they think that this is the way that they can finally accept themselves, right? We think that no woman should have to go through something like this because feminism teaches us that this is all about your own choice and doing what you want. I'll take you in a moment, sir. But fifthly, there is additional pressure on single mothers, right? Because these are inherently people who have to juggle a lot of things. Many, 2 to 3 jobs, but also child rearing. And they feel bad for not being able to give in to the belief that you should be able to dedicate so much of your time to a child and doing everything for them, because that's what this concept of motherhood is. Before I move on, yes, ma'am.
Do you regret the rise of hookup culture on your side of the house?
Sorry, ma'am, can you repeat that?
Do you regret the rise of hookup culture under your side of the house?
Ma'am, we don't see how that is exactly relevant here. So we'll move on into our second argument from that, right? So this argument is going to be about the impacts on children that this has, and our thesis is that this belief leads to social impacts that actually harm the children that they're having in the long run. Just because you are pushed to be a great mother doesn't necessarily make you one. Firstly, there is coercion to have kids, right? Like I told you in my intro, it comes from your own mothers, the women in your family, and it's about continuing your family name or whatnot. And it is inherently that you should not avoid motherhood, rather you should encourage it. There are 3 impacts of this. Firstly, the concept of childcare services like nurseries or whatnot are considered unnecessary. Why? Because it is the mother's duty to be able to be there and take care of the kid. But even in Western countries where these services are a bit more available, there is still a lot of pressure on women not to take the service, not to free themselves up to go to work, because you would not be such a good mother for giving the care of your child over to somebody else. That is not what you should do. This stigma is unnecessary and unfair. But secondly, there is also stigma around abortion and birth control. Why? Because they say that, look, you're simply getting in the way of your natural process of what you are meant to do inherently. And this means that women's freedom over their bodies is restricted, and their choice is also restricted because of these stigmas. But what is the result of all of this on children? Essentially, it means that more children are being brought into the world where they are not wanted by the people closest to them, by the people with a biological link to them. They are in an inconducive environment, and kids are raised best if they are wanted. Excuse me. And therefore kids are more likely to fall into traps of truancy, of criminality, of feeling unwanted by your parents, by your mother, who is supposed to be loving you so much, and therefore you go to things like gangs and drugs, and this creates so many social harms, right? But furthermore, all of this results on a bigger burden on the mother, because the mother is considered to be responsible for how their kids behave. This scrutiny is pressed upon the mother, and not evenly so, right? And lastly, we tell you that this results in increased teen pregnancies as well, because no matter what age you are, you should be able to be a mother. It is your biological creation. It is what society wants you to be. We think that you don't need to be glorified for it to be good at it. Therefore, side with the side that understands what pressures mothers go through, and that these are not pressures we need.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you very much. decided to focus on the actor of the woman who is coerced. The problem is, ladies and gentlemen, that the vast majority of women in society are not the actor that side proposition is trying to characterize to you. And why this is so important is because we on side opposition recognize that on both sides of the house, individuals are going to be having children. Some individuals who are coerced and some individuals who are not coerced. But the important part is this. After they have these children, after pregnancies occur, how are mothers going to react to these kinds of children, and how are they actually really going to benefit these individuals? It's on this basis we are so proud to be opposing on-side opposition. What do we believe? First, we believe the priority of feminism is to maximize the happiness and fulfillment for individual women. You do that more on-side opposition. Second, we also support the growing belief that fathers should find fatherhood to be a rewarding experience. Third, we believe that the widespread belief that will exist in Prop's world is actually going to be a world where women still are going to be the only actors in society, no thank you, able to have children. Given this, we would rather and we would prefer a world where women find what they are doing purposeful and valuable rather than it being seen as a necessary obligation to continue to have children and to continue to populate their society. All right, let's get into what they said on their side of the house and why ultimately we take it down. The first thing they bring up is that we don't really need to glorify motherhood, right? And that there are many terrible impacts of this. So the impacts they give you are things like, no thank you, like how you are coerced, you are pressured, how you are less likely to have these dreams and achievements, and why that's necessarily negative. And then they specifically talked about, maternal mortality in the developing world. Why do we take this down on side opposition? We think that the counter-narrative you get is not one on side proposition that is so positive. Rather, we would tell you what you are going to have otherwise is you are going to see motherhood being seen as something that isn't really worthy in society. Why is this? We would argue that when something is seen as rewarding, when it's seen as a positive experience for these women, that's when it's going to be seen as more useful to society, but you lose that on side proposition. Furthermore, right, we would argue that we think that already in status quo, women are the only ones who are capable of having children. This is important to recognize because it means on both sides of the house, women are the only ones, no thank you, who are going to be having these kids. Given this, we would argue that it's better to have a world in which women believe that, this is a valuable and positive experience, and they are more likely thus to actually believe it to be valuable, no thank you. And we think, and as my partner will explain, they are more likely to actually take care of their kids better. But finally, we bring up this idea of hookup culture, which was POI'd, for the reason that we see that hookup culture is something that is new. It is something that is on the rise, that is actively fought against patriarchal structures. We would tell you that on our side of the house, where you do have, motherhood seen as valuable, you can still have individuals that aren't necessarily all becoming mothers. Just because this belief is widespread in society, recognize that it is still something that a woman who doesn't want to have a kid is still not going to follow this belief in status quo. That's what we think is important to recognize. No, thank you. Finally, they bring to us this idea how, the children who are brought into this world are going to be unwanted, they are going to be treated criminally. We argue that when women find their jobs valuable, when they feel as though they are doing a good to society, what you get is a society in which they are more likely to raise their kids in a way that is beneficial. They're going to raise them more with care and kindness because they believe what they are doing is actually helping society and is a net good. We think that actually is less likely to have kids becoming criminals. Let's get into this first point about what we really think the counter-narrative looks like, which before we get into that, you would
Do you
disagree.
support the social pressure that coerces women to be stay-at-home moms?
No, we definitely don't think women should be stay-at-home moms unless they want to. But what we think you get on our side of the house is a world in which, motherhood is seen as valuable for the working mom, for the part-time mom, for someone who is a single mom. We don't necessarily see why it only supports, the stay-at-home mom, and your side has never properly characterized that. Let's get into this first idea about how the counter-narrative is one that is more likely going to be negative. What is the patriarchy like in status quo, ladies and gentlemen? We argue on side opposition. It is something that is extremely polarizing and is something where there is a clear binary, where you have often men, for their own purposes, want to push down women. What's this tangibly look like? This looks like expectations for women to wear makeup at all times. It looks like an expectation that a woman is either smart or beautiful, but can't be both. Why do we think that is likely going to happen in, a world where, say we regret, these expectations? What do we think the other world looks like? We would tell you it's a world where these women and what they're doing isn't actually seen as valuable. It's not seen as rewarding. Why is this so important? We would tell you it's more likely that these women are going to be seen as not helping society, as not doing a job that is, actually useful, that these women are just simply following their obligations set about by society, no thank you, and they aren't actually contributing in any meaningful way. Why is this so negative? Because it sends the message that now women have to sacrifice themselves for the happiness of others. They have to do something that isn't rewarding to themselves, but simply because it is an obligation, as they are the only actor in status quo that is able to have children. We would tell you the counter-narrative you get in a world where we regret the belief that this is rewarding is a world in which this isn't actually seen as useful. Where would we tangibly see this? We would give you the example of a workforce, right? Our current society is one that maximizes efficiency. It is one that is so incredibly hyper-capitalist. Why is it important you note this? Because we know that our society maximizes efficiency, it means that already there is a stigma against women. There is a stigma against women that when they get pregnant, they are, using up too much healthcare. There's a stigma against women that maternity leave is bad because these women are just sucking money from corporations and not giving anything back. Why does this actually change on our side of the house? We would tell you that now it is when these decisions that women are making are seen as rewarding, when they are seen as more valid decisions, people and all of society realizes, that there is a benefit for these individuals compromising efficiency, which is maybe what employers may believe, and instead they are doing something that they personally find rewarding. Now society is prioritizing, a woman's happiness and her ability to actually find a meaningful, rewarding experience for herself over something like efficiency. That is a net good. But finally, why do we think that we actually have women, who are in better off positions? Recognize that the majority of women in society, we argue, actually would be open to the idea of motherhood and would likely very much like children. Maybe because that is something, they've known they've wanted all their lives, or maybe because, a part of it is some women are, genetically much more interested in actually having children. Why do we actually have a benefit on side of opposition? It's important that this choice that women make is seen as rewarding because that's when it's seen as a rational and good choice. Rationality, and if someone is rational, is about whether they are maximizing opportunities for themselves. It's about whether they are doing what is best for their own interest. We argue that when motherhood is seen as something rewarding, it is seen as something that is maximizing their own choice, that's when it's good for feminism. Because we argue on side of opposition that feminism is about maximizing the choice of a woman and allowing women to make choices that make them most happy. We would tell you that currently it's not actually always seen this way, right? But when you actually have a world in which, this is seen as a rewarding choice, when women are seen as rational actors, that's when you benefit the feminist movement by actually having individuals and women feeling like they are doing something fulfilling and rewarding and actually better fulfilling their own personal choice. How do we think that this plays out onto other actors? We would tell you for men in society, when this is actually seen as a rewarding choice that women are making, men are more likely to respect this decision. Because we would tell you that these individuals are now likely to realize that women are making rational choices that benefit themselves and maximize their own happiness. But for the rest of society, why do we think we get a benefit? Because when women are seen as actually doing and actually contributing in a way that is rewarding to themselves, that actually reflects on the rest of society. Because women ultimately, when they have kids as the only actor able to do so, are helping society, and the rest of society needs to realize it. So proud to oppose.
The 10 women in this room are lucky. We have been sent to school. Our parents are going to eventually pay for a higher education. We are told it's all right to have goals and dreams and whatever. But at the very same time, we are told that if it ever comes to a point in between choosing between your work and staying at home and having a child, you know what the answer is. We are being fed this idea that nothing will ever be as valuable as looking at your child's smile. No salary, no fulfilling of your goals, no job, no relationship, no romance, none of it will be as fulfilling as looking after your child. That is the sort of rhetoric that is being pushed not only on the 10 women in this room, but also the 4 billion women in this world. So let's pushing our context to you on how much women are suffering, which they absolutely fail to engage with. The degree of brainwashing, what happens with the taboo on childcare and contraception, what happens when you push women who don't want to have kids into this, what happens when you're glorified for your biology and not your skill. Visualize that happening to 4 billion women, and not just you, not just your mother, and not just the 10 women in this room. So before I move on to my argument on the impact on men and fathers, let's deal with a few rebuttals. A lot of their case hinged on this idea that the void we are filling if we take away this glorification is that now you're going to be invalidating motherhood. That's not true. You can have a perfect balance. It's going to be like any other job. You have the pros and cons of working, for example, in engineering or working as a lawyer, and then women can make a rational choice. On your side, women are not making a rational choice because they're being coerced into making the choice you want them to make. And they made a huge concession in their case when they spoke about, we want to satisfy society, we want men to respect us by giving into their ideology of doing exactly what they want. So they are the ones who are forcing women to make an irrational choice, coercing women into this choice. So we're saying that's not the alternative on our side. On our side, you can have both this there. We're not invalidating women who want to be mothers. Secondly, on their whole point of look, hookup culture also exists, which prove that your context isn't true. Firstly, that is an absolute fallacy. Hookup culture is shamed as much as not being a mother, right? If you look at not just in high school or in university, even in the workplace, if you're not married, you are shamed for not being able to come for your work brunch with your husband. You are given looks, people roll their eyes at you. Hookup culture is shamed as much as not being a mother. So their rhetoric is not true on their side. But we tell you that, look, women on our side who are even on the fence of not wanting to be a mother are pushed because of the context that they told us to, right? Now, thirdly, let's look at their point on feminism. They spoke to us about, this alternative of women being pushed into being CEO-hungry lifestyle or something of the sort. But we're saying, no, that's not true at all. That is the way the patriarchy presents the feminist movement. The feminist movement wants you to make your own choice, regardless of whether society sees you as being superb and awesome and godly-like or goddess-like for being a mother. The feminist movement pushes you to make your own choice, regardless of what society thinks about you. That is why the feminist movement encourages you to be a stripper if you want to be a stripper, and that is shamed on their side. But before I move on, yes ma'am, your point.
On both sides of the house, in developing nations, as you spoke about, women are going to be pushed to have kids for economic reasons. Given this, shouldn't women at least not have a preconceived notion that having children is so negative?
No, ma'am, we're saying that women should be aware of the negative sides of motherhood, because it is true that you suffer with postpartum depression, you suffer with this rhetoric of having to give your absolute 100%, you suffer with having to give up your job in order to take care of your children. So yes, women should be aware of the negative implications of motherhood. On your side, that doesn't happen, right? On our side, we're saying, yes, women are being pushed, and that's bad. That is what we're here to regret, the very rhetoric that is being pushed in these developing nations. So now let's look at the impact on men and fathers. They told us that they are for the glorification of fatherhood as well. But we say that that cannot exist. Not even forget glorification, at least praising fatherhood cannot exist in a world where there's so much emphasis on motherhood as a rewarding experience. Let's look at our status quo. You don't have baby showers thrown from men. There's a significantly less number of self-help books that are written by fathers advising other fathers on parenting. So the actual context or the actual reality is that there's a rhetoric that fathers are only there to provide. You can't have the two on their side. They can't have it all. But we have three impacts of this argument. Firstly, we have increased scrutiny on mothers and reduced scrutiny on fathers. Shania already explained to you why it's bad on mothers, and they didn't respond to that. But let's look at the impacts on why it's so bad on fathers. Firstly, there's there's this precedent set that it's okay for fathers to take less of responsibility. So they're less involved in their kids' lives. They don't go to the same amount of games and plays. They don't help these kids study. They don't stay overnight at hospitals because that's considered the mother's job. It's a part of this rewarding experience that our society is selling to us. You mothers only have to give in their 100%. Fathers don't. So they're conditioned that it is the father's job. And this is extremely bad, not only on the rest of our society pushing gender roles and heteronormativity, but also on these fathers who take a backseat and relax as the mother does everything. The second impact on fathers are those individuals who actually want to get involved in their kids' lives. There's less of an incentive to do so because be it the merits or the failures of the child are all blamed on the mother. They're not acknowledged for their involvement. They're not even incentivized or motivated to be more involved in their lives. And that's a negative impact not only on the children, but also on these fathers and their quality of life and standard of living, right? Because they feel neglected by society, they experience anxiety and things like that because no one cares about them and their involvement, and they're also stigmatized if they're compassionate or loving. So that leads me on to my third impact of this, right? So we've already spoken about how it pushes this idea of toxic masculinity, that only mothers should be giving this absolute 100% into their children. Secondly, we're saying that there's now going to be a disincentive against stay-at-home dads, and that's what we see in our status quo as of now, right? Even if it is their calling, if they don't want to go out into the formal workforce and they want to stay at home, it's stigmatized extremely because that's the mother's job, not yours. Your rewarding experience is going to the stock exchange. Thirdly, we're saying that gay parents and single dads are going to be even more marginalized than they already are because it's not their experience to live out, it is mother's experience, right? So we're saying that there's this rhetoric with their side, they're never going to be good as ordinary parents because there's no mother in the picture. This also has an impact on custody cases, where fathers, no matter how brilliant they are at parenting, will never receive parental custody at the end of the day because on their side, the only rewarding experience is on motherhood, and you can't have these two narratives existing side by side. So on their side, they're not only coercing mothers to be stay-at-home moms, but even dads who want to actually be stay-at-home dads, they're coercing them into going into the workforce and doing something they may not necessarily be passionate about. So they are still yet to rebut our entire context and how it's not a rational choice, it's coercion. They're still yet to rebut the taboo on childcare, contraception, still yet to rebut this entire idea of women only being glorified for one thing and not another. And now they also have to tell us why you can have two narratives on why fatherhood is a rewarding experience and so is motherhood existing side by side, when I've told you, you can't. On behalf of not just the 4 billion women in this world, but I've told you the remaining 3 billion men in this world as well, we beg you to oppose.
At the top of the speech, I want to make two things very, very clear. First, proposition hangs a lot of their case on the unique benefits that accrue for women on their side of the house. Notice that their benefits are most impactful and most numerous in countries where it is already extremely coercive, where it's already extremely conservative and patriarchal structures strongly exist. What we're proving to you is that their benefits in those same countries that are most relevant are very, very niche and minimal and non-existent at worst. Our benefits, we're saying, will accrue in all other countries as well, where motherhood is an empowering choice and we support that choice on our side. What is the second clarification? At the point in which they never clarify what the counterfactual norm is on their side, it is very unclear what the comparative is on their side. I'm still not sure what motherhood will be envisioned as in their world if it's not something that is rewarding. If it's something that's just neutral, that ignores our first speaker's analysis about how patriarchal structures in which their case focuses on will not likely to make it so that it is a neutral experience. It is one way or another. Side proposition has to make a choice. 2 questions then in refutation. First, what is the proper comparative in this debate? Second, which side creates more harms for women? First, which is the proper comparative? Because the focus of side proposition case has been this. there is something inherently wrong about being a mother being tied to being a woman, and that is a harm that they want to avoid on side proposition. What did we tell you in response? And this is very important, panel. There is a distinction between a norm that says pregnancy is an obligation of a woman versus pregnancy is a rewarding experience for a woman. Our side stance have been very clear from the beginning. In the absence of the narrative that pregnancy is a rewarding experience for women, the first one, that pregnancy is an obligation of the woman, will still exist. Except in their world, pregnancy is seen as something that is a sacrifice that you need to do. But it isn't as rewarding or useful or maximizing happiness for you. Just something that you need to do for the man or for the family, for the economic power of our house. That is something that they create in the conservative countries that they want to talk about. The reason why the first normative will still exist is two reasons. Firstly, in the patriarchal structure that my first speaker talked about, it is likely that women has limited choice and men will have every opportunity to try and limit that choice for the woman. But secondly, pregnancy still has to exist on both sides of the house. So the question is, when women become pregnant, which side provides a better experience for the woman? Is it a side that says pregnancy is a rewarding experience for all, or is it a side that says it is not such a rewarding experience? We actually tell you that in the absence of the narrative that it is a rewarding belief, the first one, that is an obligation, is far, far bolstered. Two reasons for this. Firstly, because fatherhood is not seen as something that is desirable. At the point in which motherhood is seen as a rewarding experience and something that is desirable for the woman, there is a slow societal change that says fatherhood is also desirable because of the rewarding experience that women enjoy from it. No thank you. But secondly, we think that when motherhood or women can achieve rewarding experiences from motherhood, it is more likely that more diverse types of motherhood will exist on our side. At the point in which you can work, but also be a mother. When you can have other interests, but also be a mother. Because it is something that maximizes your choice and something that is representative to you. What is the impact of this question? This means that the bulk of their material is just outframed and uncomparative in this round. Things that they talk about, such as any other interests for these women are crowded out. Sexist men will say that the woman should stay at home. Women won't want to work. In Africa, women will be coerced into having children. They will be coerced to have children and not have abortion. That fatherhood is discouraged. All those harms still exist on both sides of the house in the most conservative and coercive countries. But the comparative is this then. On our side, it is at least less harmful because we're seeing that pregnancy is rewarding for the woman at the least. But secondly, that we're on side proposition, they're not even saying that this is a positive experience, that it isn't useful in society. Then, what is left on side proposition's case is this. The benefits only accrue for the women who are on the fence, who say, well, it isn't my obligation. I don't live in a country that is so conservative that they say it isn't my obligation. But I'll do it just because it's rewarding. They're saying that coercion is so bad that we need to regret this notion. This is not worth it for two reasons. Firstly, these are very niche and rare cases in terms of numbers. But secondly, there is minimal harm for those women who live in those types of countries where pregnancy is something that is likely to be very supported, something that is supported from others, and there's institutionalized support from you, such as public programs that help you cope with pregnancy, help you deal with the difficulties of being pregnant. Before I move on to the second question, one of you, sure.
Do you support the glorification of being a soldier that happened during World War I and II?
We think that if soldiers are necessary in certain wars, then yes, glorification of soldiers is something that is necessary and something that minimizes the harm. We're not saying it isn't harmful at all, but we're saying we need to minimize at the point in which it will exist on both sides. Quickly on the second question then, because it wasn't provided with a lot of material. Which side creates more harms for women? The only thing that they say is that female suffering will be ignored and not recognized on their side of the house. This is a complete assertion at the point in which our case stance has been that we are going to celebrate that suffering, at the point in which we can say it's a rewarding experience and we can provide programs that say, we will support the suffering and, help you get over with it. But second, we think that the rewarding experience that the vast majority of women actually feel, objectively feel from pregnancy is actually invalidated on their side. Why is it fair for society to say, even if I feel rewarded from being pregnant, that it isn't something that is official, it isn't something that should be normal for you? Third constructive point then, which will also implicitly clash with their idea about children. This point is about the positive impacts for women and children on our side of the house. I want to start with the children aspect because they focus so much about it. Two things here. Firstly, given the context that I gave you and given the framing that I give you, I think parents are more likely to take ownership of the parenting of that child when they're seen as a product of a rewarding
rewarding experience rather than something that was sacrificial, something that was necessary but distasteful at the end. This looks like caring more about that child's education, reading to them at home. I find it extremely lucky that my mom thinks that I was a product of a rewarding experience and cared about so much about my education and me growing up when I was very young. But second, children are likely to have a better interaction and better time, social time with their parents when they don't feel like a burden, when they don't feel like a product of something that their mothers had to do unwillingly. When the societal expectation exists that say, children should be blessed because they are products of a rewarding experience, they are blessings to this world, there's more likely to be things like interactions with their parents, more likely to come to them when there's troubles at school or when you've committed a minor crime, to talk about those problems. Talk about, the growing up of the troubles that you face when you're growing up. But secondly, I want to talk about why the belief that it is rewarding actually makes mothers find it more rewarding. Why? Because the practical pain that is created in pregnancy that is necessary on our side is outweighed by a psychological belief that you're fulfilling a greater good. But also, living through pregnancy is so much about the support from people around you, your friends and family, who also believe it is rewarding and bring positive energy to you. Why is this important? Because recognize that on both sides of the house, some women will be mothers regardless of a widespread belief, such as mothers in developing countries where it's an economic advantage to have many children, so you must have children on both sides of the house. In cultural areas where it's culturally very important to carry your last name and your bloodline, so it's important for you to have children. But thirdly, women who unpredictably get pregnant but are not just scared away from abortion and don't want to take that option. For these actors that exist on both sides of the house, we think that it's at least better that on our side, on comparative, these women find it rewarding to be a mother, to be pregnant. On both sides of the house, we want to protect women to the best of their abilities. But side opposition in this case has been more realistic. In the absence of a narrative that says motherhood is rewarding, on their side of the house, they still rely on the narrative that motherhood is an obligation, but it's a sacrifice on their side.
Thank you. I would like to invite the first speaker of the opposition to deliver their speech.
Judges and members of the House recognize that the entirety of side opposition's case is hung on the assumption that in the absence of the belief that motherhood is a rewarding experience, you still have pressure on the mother to have a child because it is an obligation. If we break down this one singular argument that they have, that this is what's going to fill the vacuum, then essentially they do not have a case at the end of the day. So let me do that. But I'm going to answer 3 questions in the form of 3 clash points, and I'll answer that very same point in my first clash point. Firstly, the impact that this is going to have on mothers, and then as a trickle-down effect, the other 2 stakeholders are going to be my clash point on children and fathers. So first, the impact on the mothers. Let me first of all deal with this entire alternative that they gave us, that look, motherhood will still be considered an obligation. We contest this from the very beginning. One, we say that we do not see a reason as to why people will still consider it to be an obligation of a mother by virtue of the fact that you still need to have kids in society. We still need engineers in society, we still need doctors in society, but we don't see a reason as to why people actively pressurize people to still have them in society. The reason as to why they lose this debate is because it is unlikely that it is unlikely that this will not be treated like any other job. No, thank you. Because there are still pros and cons of having a child. We recognize that even in status quo, without coercion, some mothers find it a fulfilling experience. We do not contest that. But the fact is that that stereotype is not one size fits all and does not apply to every single female. The fact is that therefore, this can still be treated as any other job with any other pro and any other con, and therefore it's still a rational decision if you choose to have a child. No, thank you. But furthermore, we say that this idea that the notion that it is something necessary and therefore society will make them do it is something that exists even on their side with the additional factor of it being a reward experience, even though it is not true. We say the idea that it is a reward experience only further gives rhetoric to certain individuals to say it is rewarding, therefore you should do it. So that's only further pressure on people to say, yes, it is already your obligation to have a child. The fact that it is a reward is even more reason as to why you should have that child in the first place. So that is something which is only even worse on their side. No, thank you. Second, they say the benefit or the comparative on their side is that it is because it is considered a rewarding experience, therefore at least mothers enjoy the fact that they have a child. Let me break down as to why this is not true. Because we say mothers are actively coerced into it, and not all mothers find this rewarding. If you are not in a good financial position, if you are not in a conducive environment to be able to raise a child, it is therefore much harder for you as a mother to be able to enjoy your life to the fullest. The opportunity cost of having a child is massive. So even if a person thinks, look, I am going to enjoy the fact that I am going to have a child. So on the comparative, both of these females have children, but on their side apparently they think that they're going to enjoy it, therefore more people are willing to have a child and therefore have a child. But the fact is not all of them will enjoy it. The opportunity cost is massive in the sense that you are still going to have to spend on your child, you're still going to have to put them into education. That is the opportunity cost of your own life. You can spend on yourself, you can have time on yourself, and it limits your ability to be able to self-actualize yourself in the sense that you want to go to a certain job or you want to do something that you want. The entire first argument that we brought to you is basically that because of this added coercion, more women are forced into this choice, and that is extremely harmful. We gave you several impacts. The fact that they cannot work, the fact that they do not want to be qualified from a young age. This particular impact does not exist even in the vacuum that, look, it is an obligation, therefore you should have a child. We think that even then young kids would not be pressurized in thinking, yes, you need to be a mother from a young age in the first place. They will still want to be qualified. They will still have the incentive to be qualified because they do not think, oh, if I have a child, my life will be perfect. So you don't really think that is really realistic on their side. But furthermore, we say, no, thank you, that in countries which is troubled and plagued by overpopulation, which is a very big problem right now in status quo, especially in places like China. The fact is that it is unlikely that society is going to push you that you definitely have an obligation to have a child, because the fact is you are anyway trying to de-incentivize kids from having children in the first place. So in those particular areas, we do not think that that's really going to be a problem. Rather, we think you're going to be incentivized to do whatever you want. No, thank you. But furthermore, when they tell us that, look, that we're only talking about conservative countries, we say the reason for this is because this kind of belief is most prevalent in those areas, but furthermore, we think it's only going to be worse in those areas. Why do we say this? Because it is in those countries where it is a belief that you should have a child because that is your only option in your life within that country. No, thank you. In the idea that it is a rewarding experience, there are females that will never try to change that narrative. They'll always be satisfied with the narrative that this is what I am meant to be, and therefore they will never try to change the fact that there is a patriarchy that forces them to be mothers in the first place. On our side, no thank you, where it is not necessarily a rewarding experience, and you can do anything else you want. In these conservative nations, in continents like Africa, people will be more likely to try and change the fact that that is the kind of standard that is set on them, and therefore they are more likely to be able to self-actualize themselves. Before I move on, yes ma'am.
If I want to climb the corporate ladder because I believe that is personally rewarding, am I being coerced?
No, so the fact is, information is not necessarily coercion, right? The fact is, if you are told, I'm going to climb the corporate ladder and you're given certain benefits, at the same time told, this is the kind of opportunity cost that you're incurring, that is not necessarily coercion. But that is not what happens with motherhood in status quo. The idea of motherhood is that you must do it, or you have to do it, and therefore you should do it, because the fact is, it is the only thing which is going to give you fulfillment and self-actualization. But furthermore, we say that even if that was not true, that is still something that is pushed onto females. Why is this the case? Because it is a line used by everybody in status quo, or the patriarchy in status quo, to say you must be a mother because it is rewarding, not that you must be a mother because children are necessary. So on your side you have less, so on our side you have less people having children by virtue of the fact that this is not pushed onto them by the patriarchy. No, thank you. But secondly, let's leave the second stakeholder of children and fathers, who are comparatively small stakeholders. Only tell us that you are more likely to take care of a child in a better way if they are a reward or something that is rewarding. No, we say that yes, we concede on both sides of both will have children, but on our side, when you have a child, it is more likely to be a rational decision and an uncoerced decision. Therefore, you are more likely to be wanting to take care of a child, and not only that, that you have the capacity to be able to take care of a child. We spoke to you about how people are taken away from the idea of abortion, no thank you, and the idea that you should go to child care services and put a greater burden on themselves. Therefore, it is irrelevant whether or not I want to take care of my child if I do not have the financial means to do so, and I bring a child into an environment which I have not created to be conducive for the child, no thank you. It's unlikely that child is going to be taken care of with. But secondly, this idea of fathers, and what about fathers? Because the criteria they gave us in opposition for speech itself is that look, we support the fact that fatherhood is something that should happen in status quo. But the fact is that is unlikely to happen on your side when it is particularly motherhood which is considered to be rewarding and not necessarily fatherhood, which is the reality of today's debate. So first of all, you are stigmatized if you are considered to be a father of someone who takes care of the child because they say that's the mother's job, that's not yours. Secondly, you are de-incentivized to be a stay-at-home dad because the gender role is perpetuated because there is one gender role in the mother, therefore there should be a second gender role in the father. That is a harm that exists exclusively when it is considered to be a rewarding experience for the mother. But we already gave the statistic about how custody is never given to fathers because it is considered only motherhood which is rewarding, and therefore only mothers who should take care of their children in the first place. So on those grounds, we tell you it is worse off for the father if it's considered an exclusively rewarding experience for the mother. But we say that the kind of idea in status quo has been created by the idea that motherhood is a rewarding experience and is being used as a tool of oppression by the patriarchy. So the comparative is not that they will still be forced to have children, and therefore, but the only fact is they will enjoy it because of the fact it's considered a reward experience. We say it is a rational choice. It's treated like any other job, and therefore it is a better idea of motherhood that we present to you. Okay, you should side with proposition.
Never contested or framing in this debate that this round is about how we can maximize the happiness of women. What they wanted to discuss were incredibly nebulous terms pertaining to coercion without responding to a characterization about the fact that women are already coerced under the status quo. What we were able to give you under our side of the house were tangible ways that this social norm is able to benefit women, more institutionalized state support, a woman's spouse respecting her decision to ultimately have kids. Those harms went unresponded to, and because we were able to prove that this norm equals better treatment for women and happier women, we were able to win the debate on that ground. I'm going to be analyzing this debate under three themes. Firstly, does this coerce women to have kids? Secondly, who is able to tangibly benefit women more? And thirdly, what are the impacts on other stakeholders? Starting with the first theme, does this social norm ultimately coerce women? The claim that we got down their bench was that because motherhood is seen as being desirable, more women who otherwise would have pursued things like a career ultimately want to have kids. Multiple responses to this piece of argumentation. Firstly, a lot of elements of motherhood actually are incredibly fulfilling for the vast majority of women. You can do things like develop a biological connection to your child. You can explore a period of self-discovery where you're able to pursue something that you wanted to for the vast majority of your life. So because motherhood actually is fulfilling for the vast majority of women, it is unclear to me as to why motherhood is objectively bad and why women actually have false information under the status quo. Secondly, simply because something is seen as being rewarding, it doesn't necessarily mean that that thing is ultimately coercive. Women can still be rational and access information about what motherhood is going to be like. They can do things like read about it. They've probably seen how their mother ultimately raised them, They've actually had the opportunity to undergo taught into that. Third response. They weren't very responsive to our counterfactual as to how it was actually going to be the opposite form of coercion existing under the status quo. The only response that we got to my first speaker's argument was that two narratives surrounding positive and negative motherhood are able to exist simultaneously. This ignores the two mechanisms that we gave in first speaker as to why the most likely counterfactual is actually demonizing women who try to become mothers, viewing them as a burden. We gave you two things. Firstly, we were able to explain why the patriarchy likes to be incredibly prescriptive and to either view something as being exclusively good or exclusively bad. The reason for this was, this gives men far more control in society over the opportunities and the choices that women are able to make. The second mechanism that we gave was about efficiency, that ultimately, if women are doing things like in the workforce for a longer period of time, we are able to achieve things like better societal productivity. So when we have both of these factors existing, the most likely counterfactual is actually saying women should maybe not be mothers in the vast majority of circumstances. That if a woman decides to become a mother, she's actually going to be seen as a burden and do an incredibly harmful job. So even if you don't buy that though, on the comparative, why do we think it's more important that our narrative is better? So number one, I think we can get more balanced choices under our side of the house, because when we have a negative narrative that would have existed alongside a positive narrative, we're able to get a more rounded choice and perspective. But secondly, it's far more irreversible. As someone who's always wanted to be a mother is unable to access that is a very pivotal change in our own quality of life. On the comparative, even if someone becomes a mother, they can still do things like pursue a career in their later life. Those two things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. Women can become a mother, but still be able to access other opportunities as well. My final response to this idea about coercion is that they were uncomparative in engaging with the fact that coercion is likely going to exist under either side of the house. Particularly in the developing world, we're still going to want women to have kids. It is a necessary societal function. Given that coercion is always going to exist, the question then becomes, how are we best able to maximize the happiness of women, given that they're going to have children under either side of the house? This brings me nicely into my second theme about how tangibly this policy is going to impact women. We get a couple claims from Prop that I want to respond to. The first thing that they say is that it is harder to talk about the negative elements of motherhood when motherhood is ultimately glorified. A couple of responses. So firstly, I think it's actually easier to talk about the negative elements of motherhood because we take women more seriously when we begin to vocalize or complain. If we see motherhood as being something good, then we actually see someone speaking out against that, we are more likely to actually view what they're saying as being a legitimate complaint within that framework. But secondly, I don't see why something being desirable and speaking out against something are two things which are necessarily mutually exclusive. For instance, a lot of people still perceive marriage as being something that is desirable, but we still have a lot of people within society also criticizing marriage and saying that they're unhappy. People can still talk about their complaints while simultaneously viewing motherhood as being something that is fulfilling. The second claim that we get from them was child mortality, how this is going to manifest in the developing world, things like maternal health care. A couple of responses. So number one, this is not a harm that is endemic to expectations surrounding motherhood. It is a harm surrounding motherhood itself. Given that people still have to have kids, I'm unclear about how they actually get that impact under their side of the house. But secondly, our second speaker was also able to explain why we're actually going to be better in these instances. That in the case that motherhood is viewed as being something that is good, we're going to be more likely to get institutional support from the state in order to try and promote something that is viewed as being a socially good kind of thing. So in the developing world, it's actually more likely, I'll take you in a second, that people get robust maternal health care to ultimately benefit women. I'll take you now. In developed nations where the idea that motherhood is rewarding is not so strong, the idea that motherhood is an obligation is also lessening. Doesn't this prove that they are linked together, and if we get rid of one, we get rid of the other?
No. So I think that what we were able to prove is that under our side of the house, motherhood is uniquely seen as being desirable. The characterization that we gave in first was that in the absence of motherhood being viewed as desirable, that is when it is viewed as a burden and an obligation, as opposed to something that a woman should actually be able to enjoy. What material were we able to give you as to how we are ultimately able to tangibly benefit women? Because we gave you a few significant impacts that went unresponded to. The first thing that we gave in our first speech was that the choice of a woman to become a mother is ultimately viewed as being something that is respectable. For instance, if a woman is ultimately at work, she wants to be a mother but take time off, it's easier for her to do things like advocate for equal pay, the point at which her choice to become a mother is seen as legitimate. Secondly, our second speaker was able to say that if a woman believes that something is fulfilling, she is more likely to actually find happiness as a result of that. This is because what we think about something ultimately influences our own expectations. For instance, if an art is forged and we don't know that it's forged, we often view that art piece as being equally legitimate, showing that our expectations transcend into how we actually feel about things. Finally, we were able to explain that we were going to get more institutional support for women, the point at which society and the state ultimately view these things as being good. We got no responses to all of the tangible benefits about the final idea in this debate about impacts on other stakeholders. I think that both sides of the debate agree that they are less important than women. We spent quite a bit of time on it, so I want to engage with it anyways. The first thing that they said is that women are going to have kids and ultimately be more neglectful. Like, number one, this is hung on coercion. I think even if a woman is slightly coerced, she can still develop a profound emotional relationship with her child. We were able to explain that a child is likely to feel like they are less of a burden, the point at which motherhood is being seen as something that is good. What we also got from our second speaker is that mothers will try and invest more in their child to realize all of the positive benefits that motherhood will ultimately entail. The second argument that they gave us is that this is going to be harmful for fathers because this expectation doesn't exist for them as well. One, I'm not clear as to how an expectation surrounding motherhood necessarily links to fatherhood. We can ultimately view both things as being desirable. That link didn't exist under their side of the house. The characterization that we got also from our second speaker is that insofar as we see parenting as a concept as being more good, it's also easier to, in the long term, incentivize more fathers to do things like stay at home. So we were able to win that idea as well. Under our side of the house, we were able to prove that this expectation is able to maximize the happiness of women by allowing them to receive better support and to have their choice respected. On this basis, I'm very proud to stand in opposition.
Thank you. I would like to invite the reply speaker on the resolution to deliver.
Ready? I have three themes to summarize this debate. First, women in conservative countries. Second, women in liberal, moderate countries. And third, the children. But just on account of these themes, I want to say that a strategic flaw that has been critical for side proposition has been this. Throughout this entire debate, they have had a monolithic characterization of what women want. The degrees of coercion that women face, and to what extent that coercion is harmful for those women. We were more realistic in finding that degrees and the context from which these women operate, and that's why we think that we better women on our side of the house. First, women in conservative countries. What side prop mostly hung their case on was the fact that women will be coerced into becoming mothers when they don't want to. And this had multiple impacts on their side. The fact that they can't work and have to stay at home. The fact that fatherhood is discouraged. The fact that children won't be wanted on their side. The critical mistake that side opposition was able to identify was this, that they ignored the context. That in these countries where the coercion is so strong that it is harmful, that these harms are most likely going to exist on both sides of the house. Because motherhood is still seen as an unrewarding but an obligatory task that women have to go through. The only response that we got from the third proposition speaker was this, that the rewarding norm furthers this coercive pressure, never giving an explanation on why this marginal increase in the coercive pressure matters at all, why the harms will significantly increase on their side of the house. So the only realistic explanation then, at the end of this clash, is this. The harms are non-exclusive most of the times on both sides of the house. But on comparative, we can benefit these women more. Because there's more psychological relief at the point in which you yourself believe that this is a rewarding experience. At the point in which people around you believe that it is a rewarding experience, so there's more positive support from your family and your friends. And there's more positivity from the man in the house at the point in which they also believe that this is a rewarding, positive experience. There was no engagement to these comparative points that were extremely important on our side of the house. The question at the end of the clash becomes this. Given that coercion is so bad on both sides of the house, which side better minimizes those harms? We think that we did that better. And this was a strategic impact. This has a strategic impact in this round. Because they hung their exclusive harms entirely on this factor. But second theme then, women in liberalized moderate countries. What side proposition told you is that that rewarding norm still tips these women from the balance to having children instead of not having children, that this leads to more coercion. What did we tell you in response? We told you that in these countries, coercion isn't so extreme that the choice itself isn't rational at the point in which information is very readily accessible for all these women. But secondly, that if they do believe that it is rewarding, it is perfectly legitimate for the woman to make the choice that they find will uplift their quality of life. But third, that in these countries there are uniquely people who want to have children because they believe that it is objectively a rewarding experience for them. Their side invalidates that choice. But third, in the worst case scenario, even if coercion is so harmful in these countries, we believe that that norm of these motherhood being rewarding creates things like maternity leave, creates things like allowances for the children and the mother, and creates societal prioritization for these women because we respect that choice as something that is rewarding and positive in our society. Lastly, on children, what they told you is that children aren't wanted on our side, getting completely hung on proving why coercion doesn't exist on their side, which I think we already proved. But second, we told you why children will have a much better experience and why parents will be much more invested if they believe that the children are a product of something that is rewarding. I want to believe that I was a product of something that was rewarding for my mother, and I think side proposition wants to do the same. For all those reasons, we're very proud to oppose.
Thank you. I would like to invite the reply speaker.
It is perfectly legitimate for these women to buy into an idea that they think will be beneficial for them. And we think that's exactly why side opposition lost this debate, because they failed to engage with the reality that motherhood is not a perfect idea. It is not inherently rewarding. It does have its pros and cons, and that is the sort of society we want to push. They strategically failed when they told us that it was our burden to prove to you that motherhood or parenting was bad. That is false. It is our burden to prove to you that the belief that motherhood is an inherently rewarding experience is bad, and we should therefore regret it, and that is why we are very proud to propose, and we think we have won. So before I move on into my analysis on the three most important stakeholders, let's point out a few contradictions. Firstly, they told us that, look, this problem that we portrayed to you on coercion only exists in developing countries. They don't think that's true. We think it's a communal thing. It comes from families. There's conservatism all around the world. But let's say even if we do agree to their contextualization, I guess that's true. Developed countries are more liberal, for example. That shows us that where there is a lack of this belief, there is a lack of obligation, which shows us that this void is not pushed by whatever they were telling us it is going to be pushed by, right? That there is, in developed countries, for example, this ability to weigh your pros and cons and make the rational choice that they so very want these women to make. Secondly, they told us that, look, women are going to feel invalidated, and then they contradict, and you can't have this two sides of the picture by saying, it's good and it's bad, that they can't exist. But then in the very next breath, they speak to us about marriage, on how people can engage in a rational discussion on marriage by looking at the pros and cons. We're saying that is the sort of society we want to move into, and you can't move into that discussion about marriage because motherhood is considered so inherently desirable, unlike marriage, for example. Right? We want to move into that discussion. You're not allowing us to. So now let's look at the impact on mothers, who we both agreed is the most important stakeholder here. They told us that just saying that something is desirable doesn't mean it's obligatory. What was their analysis? They failed to engage with what we told you on children being brainwashed as children being brainwashed from such a young age, not just from film and media, but from their mothers and fathers telling them that your happiest moment in life is going to be when you hold or cradle your baby in your hand. No job, no salary will ever be able to satisfy them. They failed to engage with us when we told you this belief is coercion. This belief is what results in it being an obligatory, it becoming an obligatory circumstance, right? So even in developing countries, you take away this belief, you take away fulfill that obligation, they fail to engage with us. And what does that mean? It means that all our impacts of women being discouraged from work, women being suppressed, women not being acknowledged for their skills, denial of your own struggles, because now you don't talk about your struggles because motherhood is supposed to be this very, very perfect experience. You perpetuate your stereotypes, scrutiny your mothers, all our impacts still stand. But now let's look at the impact on children. They failed to engage with us. When we told you that, look, these women who are not in the financial circumstance or just don't want to have kids are forced into doing that, and children grow up in a household where they either don't have the money to be supported or the love to be supported of. And all they told us was, look, no, if you feed them this idea, they'll love their kids more. But even if that was true, we're saying at what cost is it? If we're debating this motion, if we're looking to the future, we need to care about the women that exist in our society right now and not these unborn children that they're trying to provide some hypothetical love to. They failed to engage with us on that. Thirdly, we gave you the stakeholder of fathers and showed you how this rhetoric is mutually exclusive. They didn't engage with us on their side. We've shown you how they're not only not only 4 billion women on this planet at a disadvantage, but it's the entire population. When we analyze children, mothers, and fathers, we beg you to propose.
Thank you for the debate. I would like to remind